name is Nestor. Ako yung designated filler pag walang makuha ko. So,
placeholder.
Isina ko lang si Terence. So, hindi siya, pag nagtatanong na siya, gusto ko mag-talk. Sabi ko lang, na speaker.
Yeah, ikaw una ko tinanong.
So, wala ko slides. So when Terence asked me to give a talk, I wanted to give another talk on Docker. Noong November, nag-talk din ako, i-introduce ko yung Docker sa office namin. And, I didn't think I gave a good enough introduction. Parang pinasadahan ko lang what it does. Pero nakangapa pa ako na wala pa akong masyadong practice with using the tool. So, has anyone heard of Docker? Yeah, so it's a container engine or a lightweight virtual machine that you can use to deploy your apps in. Yeah. Okay. So I'm the slides. So I have a script here. So a few weeks ago, 0.11 was released. This is known as the release, or supposedly the release candidate for Docker. So yay! But I'd like to give an introduction to how ano yung. So I'm still learning it. I put it aside for a few months. With that announcement, I wanted to resume how to use that particular tool, specifically in the context of how do you deploy a Rails app in a Docker container. And apparently, it's been a lingering question. We used to have this Google Hangout. Zach was there, our first and only Google Hangout, and Rad too, where we explored the question: how do we deploy an app? I'd like to share what I've learned since last. I'd like to share what I've learned so far. There will be gaps, and there will be things that I won't be able to explain fully kasi pinag-aaralan ko pa lang. So please bear with me. So today, yeah. So that's one of the notes that I'm using, and also this blog post. But this is a bit dated. So this earlier today, I asked Terence to help me set up a Rails app inside the Docker container. We actually we were able to do so. Kaya masyadong contrived yung conditions noon. Namely, it still runs webpack and it doesn't use a separate database container. But before I go to the demo, I'd like to give, so part of the difficulty in learning how to use Docker is that when you go through tutorials, they refer to terms such as containers, images, index, almost interchangeable. I mean, those terms occur all the time, and if you don't have a good grasp or a good mental model of what those things are, it's very hard to follow, at least in my case. So it's very important to get the names right first. I'll start with the term. I'll start with the term container. A container, I'm mentioning that term, but what really is container? Container is an instance of an image. Okay, so what's an image? An image is a snapshot of a file system that could be a collection of or a layer of other images. With the risk of having to explain what the documentation said, I really encourage you to please just go to the docs for more detail because they explain this better than I do. So I'm just laying down the scenes. So I said containers, I said images. So when you're deploying an app in Docker, it lives in an image, then you spin it up to run in a container. And Docker provides ways of controlling that container. You can run, you can stop, you can restart, you can inspect what's inside, and so on and so forth. The third term that I will introduce is what's called an index. An index is simply Ruby developers, so we know Ruby gems. So yung index yun yung Ruby gems ng Docker. Now, that's the place where developers can share their images. An image is simply, say, who uses Vagrant here? Okay, so an image is simply a particular, say, operating system. Let's say Ubuntu. Ubuntu pa lang naman yung supported ng Docker. So, instead of you having to create a base box, or you certainly can, what most likely would you want to do is go to the index and fetch the Ubuntu image na pre-built na. And rather than build, although you're welcome to do so, but most likely you don't need to build an existing image. Yeah. Okay. So that's it. Okay.
So is it like it's Amazon's images, right?
Yes.
So is it like
Machine
that?
images. I don't know the details of what an AMI does, but an AMI runs on a Zen hypervisor. Parang, but
or that's
but
more like a separate virtual machine.
Yeah, it's more of a separate virtual machine in the sense that two AMIs have separate Linux kernels. In Docker sense, you're sharing a sub layer of, let's say, the same Ubuntu kernel.
So there's less you can have many containers in one machine.
Yeah, and share the same kernel. Again, I'm not the person to speak of too much details. I'll probably do another talk once I learn more. Zach would probably know more than anyone else in this room kasi siya yung pinagtatanungan namin nung hangout. So, okay. So I was an index. No? What else? Let me check my...
I have a question.
Yes.
I mean, for the people who haven't heard of Docker, why would you want to use it?
Okay. There could be a lot of motivations, but if you're on the laptop, you can run more virtual machines on Docker. So there's a resource. You want to save one resource rather than, let's say you want to simulate your stack of an app server, an Nginx front end, a message queue, and something in jobs probably. So you have, let's say, 5 or 6 pieces running around. In some projects, like the ones we've worked for a while, what they do for their staging environments, kinocompress nila sa isang VM. They jam everything there and then run it. Actually, that's what we did for Vagrant packets in one box. And basically, there's now a disparity between how it's deployed versus how it's being developed and tested. In some people they're okay with it, and some people are not. I mean, they mababasa nyo sa internet na some people are no, development staging should resemble production, but I don't know. I still don't draw a hard line about it. But yeah, so maybe economics motivation. Now you can actually simulate multiple machines using containers. My motivation is I saw this. I've really been curious how the Circle CI work. you use Circle CI. And I wanted to somehow build something like that. Use triggers to build my, not just run my integration test, but actually be able to ship code without having to do a cat deploy. At least use triggers to do those things. So yun yung nag-motivate sa akin to study all these things. Kung may tanong pa, yes.
So Docker's like kind of like Ruby Chef, where you create recipes to run certain things, execute certain deployments, scripts.
Yeah. Actually, there's a tool called a Docker file, which I will show later. But yes, there's a part of there that provisions an image using a sample text file. Yeah, so I'll show an example later. So it's not really just a shift or a way of describing your stuff. It's more of like parang posting environment siya na it's where you put your stuff and then run it, then you can actually monitor what's happening. So it's more of a platform, so to speak. Right. So enough talking. Let's see if I have my file. Oh yeah, sorry. Everyone's getting started. I'd like more people to get started so I can ask more questions. And I think matutuloy ba yung meetup mo?
Yeah. Just finalizing venue.
Alright.
We're expecting Docker meetup to happen next week. Hopefully Friday.
Really. So
Where?
Meetup.
I'll finalize it.
yeah, okay. So yun. So I hope a lot of people get interested. Parang marami tayong so okay. Special note for Mac users who want to use Docker. Unfortunately, you can't use it without having to install one tool. It's called boot to Docker. It's a virtual machine that runs the Docker service. Then you connect through a command line interface. So you need VirtualBox. Tapos you boot up the boot to Docker ISO, which runs a Linux virtual machine that runs. Yeah.
I heard you like virtual machines, so we put virtual machines inside your virtual machine.
Yes. Now the problem there is that this morning I was debugging a port forwarding issue for us. I was running this app at port SSH port 22. Ba't di ako maka-SSH dito? Wait, where am I? I'm in Mac. I'm lost. Inception. Sorry. So what I did was I set up a DigitalOcean for some Linux. It's cheating. So yeah, boot to Docker. Download it. There's an instruction. More than enough instructions to try it out. What else is in the list? So yeah, so run a container, start container. Before Linux. Oh yeah, there's other tool other than boot to Docker.
That's easier. That's proposed to align a stripped down version.
It's not. It's something. It's just enough to boot Docker.
Super simple. Okay.
Diyan tumatakbo yung data. And so I've been using this. Yeah. Okay. Fusion has. Fusion released a version of their Ubuntu. So .cloud, the company that's backing Docker, they have their Ubuntu-based image. What Fusion did is they took a look at what .cloud did and they said, oh no, we can do a better job. Particularly, so they noticed that although I haven't seen it, but they noticed that over time, maraming zombie processes na naiiwan dun sa container. And they found out that it has something to do with how the signals are being sent on a Docker environment. So they fixed part of that, and they installed a few other goodies, particularly SSH and Run It. Run It is yung module na. So you can run a process tree, and they also customized the SBIN in it with SBIN/my_init. So you can actually have a startup script and use that. There's also a passenger. So based on this thing, there's also a passenger thing that has Nginx and a passenger backend. Okay. So yeah, we use those things today. So what did we do? Hopefully it's still alive. Where is it? Hopefully it's still alive. So I set up this digital worship thing.
Docker CD dot.
Oh yeah, sorry. So getting used to typing that. Right. So it's not running. Alright, so here I'm running 3 Nginx images and different port numbers. So because we're launching an error page as a service, and these use the same image, but they are deployed in different containers. So what I did here was called Docker PS, which shows how many containers are running and which. Sorry, let me just go. It shows you how the ports are mapped. So inside the container, there's an Nginx process that listens to port 80. But it gets mapped on the outside on the internet as port 82. Yeah, so some people say it's kind of like true. So this other command that I'm going to do is spin up that other app that I was in the Docker images. Yeah, okay, so I have it here. This little repository here is, so we're writing yet another admin tool. So just a small app that does cross, and so I've been ranting about just how many times I have to write these things. So there, this app is now running. We've been able to package it into an image and we're able to run it on a container. At least kanina, it's first Terence. Terence helped me with that. And it's Mga pizza. Yeah. If you look at the side, it's 900 gigs. So took us a while to upload. But yeah, so okay, I'm going to run this image. So the syntax here is Docker run. RM means, so I'm not running this on daemon mode. So I'm telling Docker is that when the container gets killed, remove it, erase the container. At import mapping niya, so I'm mapping the internal 3000 to the external 3000. which image ito. But then once the container boots up, give me a bash script or give me a bash thing because I haven't finished configuring this. Na hopefully magpatakbo yung unicorn ng engine next day. Kasi hindi na have time for that. So, okay.
That's how fast that is.
Yeah, that's how fast it is. So, so the Rails app is here. Other admin tool and Rails is just a Rails app. So I'm going to run Rails now. This is just development, so I'm not setting any environment variables. That's an open problem. I'm still trying to figure out how to reliably pass environment variables. Alam mo yun na. Birthday niya ng isang araw. So I'm gonna run Rails now. Or 3,000. So yeah, okay. So let's see if I can access this app.
Nung may ako sa upuan, no? Nakakalap kayo sa
Oh.
Take TV migrate.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so when the container dies, you're starting at the fresh stage. SQLite lang to, we don't care about that. But there are, so in this course, in runs on Docker, what they did was they have ways of linking containers together. They actually have a container that contains just a file system, parang var lib, tapos nandun yung Postgres. And hindi pa dun, wala pa dun yung Postgres na data. Hiwalay pa. So, 3 or so pages. Right, so simply a list of employees, and each employee can view an event calendar and file for vacation. And manage their profiles. Well, at least that's what that's. So no bundling. I didn't do any bundle. So there's the migrate. Right. Okay. Same demo. Pero papakita ko yung Docker file. So let's get that. Someone mentioned chef, so or Razzle, demo Ansible. This is what is called a Docker file. It contains each line is an instruction that tells you that tells Docker how to configure an image. First line is important. It tells Docker where to get the base image from. So I'm using Fusion's base image, tagged it to a certain version. Then this is Ubuntu based or Debian based, and I run get update. Run. Also, your syntax is instruction then something. Look at the docs for more details. But this is a special mention because what this does after this executes, it saves the snapshot of the image to another image. So parang may layers kayo of images. So after this, I'll show you a service that I'm using to host the index. All of these will create, this is about 20 or so steps, create images for each set of the user. I set up RPN, keys. So with the keys, that's just a convenience. It's no way recommended method. I baked in basically the keys to be able to pull the Git repo. So almost similar to what we would do in setting up a VPS or Rails up inside the VPS. What's missing here is a way of telling Docker which command to execute first, yung CMD or yung entry point. I didn't add that, so I had to start the thing manually. So that's a Docker file. To build the Docker file, and I'm not sure if I can do it here. Start the read first. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go to the Docker file and try to see if I can build the image there. So there. So goes through the each instruction, executing it line by line and saving it in an image. If this was run previously, checks to see if the thing or the ID is still the same and won't run it again. Terrence, we ran into this problem where we had to insert something in the middle. We basically, so what happened there was Docker basically reran the step up from that point where we inserted the line.
It removed the cache.
Yeah. So it goes to the this is long and it takes a while to finish. It goes to the bundle. There, so I won't finish this. So last would be key.io or quay events. I certainly pronounced it that way, but I was corrected. So it's key. This is a private Docker index. Think of it as GitHub or your gem theory. And this is the current state. We pushed this earlier. It shows you the history of the image. So which changes were made. So this is the time now. This is the latest. This time is latest. And that ends my presentation. Thank you.
So basically the difference here is, unlike other provisioning systems where you say spin up an image on DigitalOcean or Linode or in AWS, instead of spinning that up then running your provision scripts, here you're running the provision scripts on your local to build the container. Then once the container is there, you just push it somewhere else. Then if you have Docker installed on your remote or your servers, they just need to pull that and up the container. So instead of having to instead of run.
So in Capistrano world, you push the code, then Capistrano does the
pulling.
git pulling and bundle install. So yeah, so instead of just shipping just the code, it ships the whole thing that it needs. So yeah.
Basically, two ways of seeing this. So a container, there are two ways. One is that you can look at the container as just a lamination of images. So basically, there's this one base image you have, and then every run step you do in a Docker is basically a commit to that image. So that's why you have a unique hash SHA-1 hash per run, per step in a Docker file. Basically, it's a commit to that image. So at the end of that Docker file run, you have actually a series of commits to an image. So that image, you can treat it as just as something that's you can deploy to a remote Docker instance or remote Docker installation, and then run it as an instance. So it will come with its own IP address, with its own networking, with its own stuff. So you can think of it as a way to run a very lightweight virtual machine. The other way to look around at it is that container is a self-sustained app, wherein basically you build this container, and then you run it at the command line with some parameters, and then when it runs, it will run a virtual machine and then act on a parameter, on whatever parameters you give to that container. So think something like Hadoop, or like some really big process that you want to run, but you don't want to run it on your local machine. You can just build a container of that process, put it into a remote server, which is more powerful, and then run it there, give it some parameters on the command line. So basically, you turn your container into a self-sustaining app that you can just run elsewhere.
I have a question on images for either of you. So say I create a Docker file with Nginx in the index. Forgive me if I get my concepts wrong. And then I ship it somewhere else. So does that mean the Nginx binaries on my image get shipped? Or it's just the declaration that, hey, install Nginx, and when you instantiate this, download Nginx from somewhere and install it?
When you run a local Docker file, you're basically building that image yourself locally. So if that includes installing Nginx from the OS repository, it will do that. And then when you push it remotely, you're actually pushing those changes.
So I'm pushing the Nginx binaries,
Yes, binaries.
not just the instruction that Nginx
Yeah,
makes.
the instructions is basically a Docker file is just a recipe. So it just follows, Docker will just follow that recipe and then build the image for you.
So what you're saying, the index can be, instead of put this image, you can run this command.
Actually, that's another feature of Docker Index right now, because they have something called trusted builds. So basically, this integrates Docker with GitHub. So you create this repo in GitHub, put your Docker file in, and then tell Docker that this is a trusted repo. When I do commits here, you pull that repo, build a Docker image out of that Docker file. So it's not you who's gonna build the image; it's gonna be Docker IO itself. And then they will, once they build the image, once that's successfully built, they will put it into the repository of images for everyone else to download.
In Key's case, they have this extra feature where they allow you to specify a webhook, URL.
That's
That, okay, once the build is complete, I'll post to this webhook, then you can actually pull it and deploy it.
Yeah. So if that's what we're looking for, you just want to write a recipe without having to build your image yourself, then you can use that feature. Docker.
Special thanks to Terence.
Are we doing the are we?
Wait muna.
Alright.